Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Think, Engage, Thrive. Thanks for being here. And as always, we try and bring you inspiring and fun entrepreneurs who are scaling their businesses. And tonight we have Joshua Counsil from Canada, and he has co-founded Good Robot Brewing, which is not only it started out, I guess we'll hear from him, but the way I understand it is it started out as a brew pub. It's turned into multiple brew pubs, but then the manufacturing side of brewing their own beer, they've become co-packers, and they do, as they say, anything that can be put in a can, they can do. And Joshua himself claims to be a recovering engineer. So I don't know what that means. So I'd like to explore that a little bit because usually, but engineers are definitely very, cut and dry. But I don't think he is. He seems to have a great personality. So we'll talk to him a little bit. They're really growing. They've done a great job, a phenomenal job, and I think it's really interesting for people because it doesn't really matter whether they're in Canada or United States. The process is the same, and they grew their business, they scaled their business, and they're continuing to scale their business. I thought it was interesting when I was talking to him about how they realized to go in sort of multiple directions, which is great. So let's bring him in again. Joshua Counsil. He's Good Robot Brewing, and we'll hear his story and learn a little bit more about him. Hi, Josh. How are you?
Good evening, Phil. Doing pretty good considering it's not a Friday.
So tell us a little bit about your background, your history, what you've done in the past, and how you got to Good Robot Brewing, and then what you've done with Good Robot, because it's been a number of years that you've been involved with Good Robot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Starting from childhood, originally wanted to be a Disney Imagineer since the age of 6. So that's they're the dream makers, the ones who build the rides and attractions at the theme parks at Disney.
I've never heard anybody say that they wanted to be an Imagineer.
Never?
I've done over 100 shows. Nobody's ever said, I wanted to be an Imagineer. But yeah, I can understand it. It's very creative.
Well, you'd think so. And my problem is that I struggle to understand things. When I went to the guidance counselor in high school and said I wanted to be an Imagineer, she hears the word engineer and says, well, you got to get into engineering school. And it had none of the sort of creative flair that I was expecting in the rides and whatnot. Basically, I just wanted to ride the roller coasters and say, yeah, this was good. And instead suffered through fluid dynamics and quantum physics. So, quickly realized in engineering that it wasn't for me, realized but didn't take action, ended up doing a master's degree just because had no idea what I wanted to do. And I just wanted to stay in school longer, and ended up loving my master's, which was smaller, group focused, invested profs. It was at a military school, really small class sizes, really trailblazing facilities and whatnot. And we would drink at the pub every Thursday at what we called choir practice. One of the department heads, Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Billy Allen, would steal us from our profs. We'd go drink, and a lot of fun ideas would come up. And it really sort of instilled a sense of camaraderie within me that once I transitioned from there and went to the engineering world, I felt was sort of missing. The technical work was kind of interesting, but I just wasn't super invested. I'm not a passionate engineer. I was just passionate about these groups.
Yeah.
So these two guys I went to school with, Angus and Doug, also engineers. One was working in government for Ministry of Environment, and one was in the oil fields in Western Canada. And Angus had this idea to open a brewery. He said, Doug and I are doing this thing in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I was working in Seattle at the time.
Wow.
And he never officially invited me, but I quit my job anyway and flew from Seattle to start this thing, and never looked back. So we ended up creating an institution, basically this little brew pub with 15 employees or whatever, that just really had this sense of community, this sense of camaraderie, this sense of goodwill about it, of kind of supporting and taking care of one another, and really feeling that group dynamic that we felt was missing in our respective careers.
Yeah. It certainly is a different environment than school and engineering, working in oil fields and whatnot. But you started out with just one brew pub. But you were brewing your own beer.
Oh yeah. We were fellow entrepreneurs on the call. We were as ignorant and conceited as anyone. In our business plan, we had us brewing the beer and doing your standard operations and whatnot during the day. And then at 4 p.m., the three of us started bartending and serving the beer in this bar. So our financial projections were perhaps maybe a little overstated in terms of profitability. There's only so much three people can do. And quickly ended up expanding that brew pub. It became incredibly popular, won multiple awards, including Best Brewery and Best Bar and Best Patio in Halifax. It was nominated for New Business of the Year by the Chamber of Commerce. We came second, which is the best award you can get without having to give a speech. And so we literally lived there. So we were actually housemates in university. And then we lived above the brew pub for the first 3 or 4 years and the brewery. So you had a bar underneath my bedroom and then the brewery underneath Angus and Doug's bedrooms, and truly lived in the business, and did that for many years until COVID hit and kind of challenged the whole hospitality vertical, right? And we didn't know where it was going to go. So we decided to gamble a little bit. Things were moving so fast at that time anyway, borrowed a little bit of money and started canning our beers, and our retail tripled overnight. And we realized, oh shit, maybe we're holding this brand back a little bit. And maybe it's a bit of a gorilla in a cage and it needs to be let out. So we kind of pivoted entirely and focused on wholesale and e-commerce, both of which we were very late to the game. So I think we were number 15 in our category in wholesale when we started out. But we really just, went hard into sales and marketing at the CPG level. And that has been the business for the past few years on one arm of the company. Now, simultaneously, we ran out of operational capacity, needed to brew more beer and seltzers and whatever else we make. And every other beverage brand in Atlantic Canada, every mom and pop and family business had the same issue at the same time. So we thought Atlantic Canada tends to be a little lower risk than the US when it comes to entrepreneurship and innovation. So we thought, since we love gambling so much, why don't we maybe take a swing for the fences and we will make the first kind of full service alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverage co-manufacturing and co-packing solution for Nova Scotia. And so we borrowed a lot of money and raised some private equity. And since last year, we raised money in 21, built the operation. It was about a $5.5 million build or so. Built it in 2022, and then 2023 started offering our services for beverage brands. So now in 2024, it's an absolute, on paper, chaotic venture of 3 hospitality venues, 2 of which opened in the last 2 years, and then the original one from 2015, wholesale across Canada, and contract manufacturing services. So on paper, it looks a little bit messy, but they all sort of play off each other kind of nicely.
I would think that the brew pubs, where are the brew pubs located? They're not all in Nova Scotia, right?
They are all in Nova Scotia. There's 2 within 1.1 kilometers. So what's the imperial on that for our American listeners? About 0.4 miles or so, about 5 miles. So half a mile apart from each other. There's a beer garden in a very public touristy area, this big green space in the center of Halifax. One in the original, which is currently surrounded by condo developments and was surrounded by nothing when we opened it in 2015. And then there's one attached to the beverage manufacturing facility that was not part of the plan. But when we were building the facility, that community just kept literally walking into the factory while we were working and say, so when's Good Robot opening a bar here?
Yeah.
You can't ignore the customer. So we just threw together a little, I don't know what it costs. It's like 20 grand or something, a little $20,000 beer garden. And it's been very popular with that community because, again, going back to that camaraderie, they had nowhere to convene.
That's a great story. And now I guess the brew pubs, I can see how it all works together because the brew pubs expand the brand, gives customers a taste of the product. They get to sample it. They get to understand what the brand is all about. And then that carries forward. And then as you push it into CPG, you've got this leg to stand on where you could say we've been doing this since 2015. We've got a brew pub that sort of lends legitimacy to it. And then you've got the manufacturing facility. So you might as well do contract manufacturing. So I can see how it all works together.
Yeah. If for anyone on the call in the CPG space, if you haven't read Dr. James Richardson's book, Ramping Your Brand, and Phil, I don't know if you've heard that one, but he's a former anthropologist turned CPG marketer. And it's a fascinating look at how basically niches or tribes and categories are, survival instincts that have some kind of social attribute outcome, since weight management affects your social currency and so on and so forth. Anyway, his book talks about sort of staging growth in CPG and how important it is that there is no unicorn.
Right.
That even the popular brands like Red Bull, it took 25 years for that brand to get successful, but everyone thinks it was overnight. So those original pubs that we have really act as, we call them drinkubators, right? You get 70,000 customers through there a year, and you can try stuff at a small scale, get their feedback, iterate the product, so on and so forth. There's a lot of businesses that would kind of kill for that.
Sure.
Model. Kraft, as far as I understand, doesn't have cheese pubs in any city where they can kind of test out new cheeses, but in beer, it works really well. And then, this product is probably ready for private, and then it's ready for the crown corporations, because in Canada, the liquor corporations are crown corporations, which, long story short, loosely affiliated with the government. And then, once you hit this, it's ready for export and so on and so forth.
Yeah. No, it is. There are a lot of companies that should do that type of thing, have an outlet where they can test products on customers, but they don't do it. You would think that coffee would have done it years ago.
Right.
In fact, there was a marketer, a woman, I can't remember if it was Sally Hogshead or not, this was pre-Starbucks, who was doing consulting for Maxwell House. And her big push was, you should open up a coffee bar in New York City and understand what customers want in coffee. And they poo-pooed the idea. And then Starbucks comes along and opens up 1 million coffee shops. They sort of did it the other way because the brand, they permeated the brand across the country. Well, really across the world. Then they started doing retail products and such. So, it is a good experiment. I'll tell you, I had a friend who had a marketing company in New York, and they built a retail store because they focused on primarily retail brands, and helping brands get into department stores or whatever. And they built a retail store in New York City, and then they would swap out the products and to just try and get customers to just to understand customer behavior, what they liked about the product, what they didn't like the product. So for 6 months, it could be a women's clothing store. For 6 months, it could be a men's clothing store. So it was just interesting the way that they did it. But I can understand your point with it. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would love for virtually all, I think we have 20-ish clients at the Beverage factory. So that's the beverage co-manufacturing, co-packing side. I would love if some of those clients were interested in kind of throwing the NDA out the window so that we could have a drinkubator of client products and have it as essentially an experimental bar where everything you're trying is sort of pre-market, and you can give feedback on the can designs, you give feedback on the product, too much carbonation, not enough, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic, and just make it this experimental and not only experimental, but engaging space for customers where they get to give the feedback. I find that's often lacking. I'm very customer driven, and I find it baffling how few businesses kind of talk to customers.
Oh, don't get me started on that subject. We'll be here for 3 days.
Wow. Now I want to get you started on that.
Why wouldn't they? Have you presented it to the to the clients and said, forget the NDA and let's use this as an incubator, so to speak?
Atlantic Canada is always sort of, 5 years behind Boston. And so we often look to New England in terms of what's coming, as well as Ontario and Quebec, a little bit of British Columbia and Oregon and California and Washington, but really the West Coast doesn't always translate to Eastern Canada as much. West Coast might translate to Ontario, but doesn't always make its way up here. But there's something about New England that tends to translate up here well. Must be the salt water. And we found that in those places there are these, they're not exactly what I'm talking about, but there are these sort of proving grounds for co-pack products. And I haven't had the pleasure of going to any of them, but would absolutely love to go to a place where, hey, here's an energy drink with adaptogens or whatever that we're trying out, and also this extremely boozy IPA, and also this non-alcoholic wine, and also this, and so on and so forth. And it's just always sort of changing. You never know what you're getting, but it's always exciting and innovative, and you're sort of at the bleeding edge before it goes to market, and some of it might not work. But that's also the fun. That's also the fun of those experiments.
Yeah.
But I think that the clients are still in a place where, because this is relatively new to Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada, they're afraid that the consumer perception of their product being made at this facility, even though the facility is inarguably a work of art in terms of trailblazing equipment and innovation, but the perception is it's made at this little farm, out in this cute, quaint community, and there's a specialness there, even if there's not a quality control and assurance aspect to it. So I think there's probably a few years before they get comfortable with the idea of that one big product that's our most popular isn't made at our farm. It's made over here in this factory that is ugly from the highway and then absolutely stunning inside.
I can understand that. I can understand the perception. Certainly a lot of brands in the food space and beauty space want to make it so that the product is controlled by them 100% of the time, which it's not, in this day and age, really not, I don't know, economically feasible, I think, for everybody to start opening up their own, manufacturing facilities. But when we were talking about the customer for a second, and we have a lot of CPG clients that we do marketing for, and we get involved all the way from branding to advertising to all kinds of aspects, anything to do with digital, the digital space, and then even brick and mortar space. We do a lot of work, and it amazes me how little some of the CPG companies know about their customer and follow where the trends are happening.
Right.
And it drives us up a wall, because we wind up having to get involved in detail in doing research in order to build the proper ads, to do the proper targeting, to build the proper brand. And we start looking at it and say, well, here's where your customer is going. And no, that's not going to happen. And you're going, well, you better tell. I'll give you an example real quick of what I'm talking about. We had a hot sauce company that has a very strong brand, very strong. Everybody knows it. And they wanted to get into other sauces, pasta sauces, things like this. So they came out with this line of pasta sauces that was disjointed from the brand. And we said, no. Put your number one selling product, put that in the pasta sauce.
Right.
And take, ghost pepper and make a ghost pepper pasta sauce, because then you're unique and different, because nobody has that right now. No, people aren't going to buy that. I said, well, you don't understand the customer. I said, no, I think I do understand the customer. And if you don't think they're going to buy that, somebody better tell Campbell's, because Campbell's just came out with ghost pepper chunky soup, and they did a huge launch with it, and the people are loving it. And when you look at, spice and hot sauce, and it's an unbelievable category. And finally somebody else came out with it, and it's booming. And I said, I think you should have, but I could go. I mean, there's a million examples of brands. I think, in my opinion, of doing this for the last 25 years, brands get to a point where they sort of plateau and forget about the customer. They get so big, and the sales get so big, that they sort of think they don't have to pay attention to the customer anymore, that they know, and they're just going to keep pumping it out until something negative happens. And then everybody says, oh, it's the economy. It's not the economy. You took your eye off the ball. You got rid of you forgot about who the customer is.
Yeah. So many, I find so many business leaders. I actually did a LinkedIn / blog post, I think, about this recently, are so humble. That most entrepreneurs I know are, with a few exceptions, relatively humble about themselves.
Sure.
And very arrogant about their business. And or at least the business is more grandiose, and they think it's more important than it really is, and that people buy it because of this extremely huge investment they're making into social proof of some kind or whatnot. And at the end of the day, it's mayonnaise, or at the end of the day, it's a design agency, right? And you're going, you make graphics, and that's a condiment. I make something that has ethanol in it, which helps people relax. It helps take them out of reality for a little bit. I'm not saving the world. This it's to transport them to a Disney-like universe for a little bit, so they forget about the agony of their day to day. Like, you lose sight of that, and suddenly you are Jesus. And it's crazy. I can't remember where I heard, but Red Bull had the same thing happen, except they were smart and they leaned into it, which was they wanted to be an athletic performance brand, and they had the 1-800 number on the can. Yeah. And all the voicemails were at like 3 a.m. from various universities. It was all drunk college kids being like, I love your product. You guys got to make an orange version. They went, oh my God, this is not an athletic product at all. This is college frat boys drinking this stuff. And they leaned into that, right? And then they kind of met in the middle at some point and started doing, it's sport, but it's really stupid, fun, extreme sports.
It's, hey, y'all, watch this.
Right.
I'm going to jump off this cliff here. But you would do that if you were drinking vodka and Red Bull. You'd go, hell yeah, I'm going to get on this. Hell yeah, I'll jump off.
or either or. Red Bull itself, you have enough of that, you jump off the cliff.
Yeah.
But you forget, like, it is another one, like, to Dr. Richardson's point, it has an outcome that impacts your social currency, and its outcome is energy.
Yeah.
Which goes back to basic survival instincts, right? You don't want to be it sounds foolish, and we like to think we don't think like this in a modern era, but you don't want to be the sleepy guy at the party. Yeah. Right? You want to be jacked up and energetic and full of vitality. So that's why people mostly drink that beverage.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they did a good job early on I think they did a good job with the branding of it early on, and the name even. Guys want to feel virile. It's going to do, it's not only is it going to give you energy, it's going to make you feel like a man. It's going to make you feel good. And, it was all over the place. People were just pounding that stuff. But then, I remember 20 years ago, maybe it was about 20 years ago, there was a convenience store by me that was also close to one of the universities. And they would put stacks of Red Bull out towards the weekend, just Thursday nights, you'd suddenly see a stack. And I used to look at it going, who's buying all this Red Bull? And then you see the frat boys coming in, taking the Red Bull. And
or our brew pub. We had a weekly delivery from the little hilarious vehicle with the big can on it.
Yeah.
They would come every week because our Australian bar manager slept like 3 hours a night, was an absolute mayhem of a worker, a terrific human being. And he would just load that place up with Red Bull for him. And then all the employees started drinking it. You walk into the bar on a Saturday night, they sounded drunker than the customers. I mean, they would just be flying and having the best time. Best time. So, I know who's buying it.
but Red Bull really never lost sight of
No.
who their customer is. And you're right, they lean into it, but in the meantime, all that branding and everything they've done, which sort of leads into who they are, which is sort of chaotic, sort of, I'll do anything, I'm going to drink Red Bull and I'm going to climb mountains and jump off and all that. And they still, I think they still do a pretty good job.
Oh yeah, big time.
For as big as they've gotten, I don't think they've taken their eye off. To me, Starbucks has taken their eye off.
You think? Yeah.
Oh yeah, they've
Let
got.
me hear this.
I first of all, I don't understand olive oil in my coffee. It makes no sense to me.
Are they doing that?
Huh?
Are they doing that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They signed a deal. You got to look it up. I don't know if you've been to a Starbucks, but yeah, they put olive oil in your coffee if you want it. And they sell little things of olive oil that you can put in your coffee. And it makes no sense to me because oil and water, which is hot water, coffee, tea, whatever, don't mix. So it just forms a film. And I don't see how that's beneficial. And what they're trying to say is, oh, we're all about health. So olive oil is good for you to have a teaspoonful or 2 teaspoonfuls a day. And that may be true. The Mediterranean diet says olive oil is good for your body, but I don't want it in my coffee.
Right.
And I don't think that people are digging it. The other piece that they've really lost, it's really cost them a significant amount of sales, is how high they've pushed pricing. Because don't tell me that it's got to do with inflation, because your profits are up. If it was inflation, your profits would be down, but your profits are outpacing the amount that you raised prices. And people are starting to walk away going, I've lost value. And I see it all the time. And then the amount of crappy food, low quality food that they brought in, it's just, they've lost sight. And I just don't, I just think that they don't, they get to the point where they think they're invincible. And then what will happen is, just like any brick and mortar retailer, in a couple of years, you'll hear about them shutting down stores. Well, it's the economy, or we're overstored. We're going to close, 1,000 stores, just like you hear from supermarkets, or, and Bed Bath and Beyond was another one. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but
yeah, sure.
Yeah, they closed down. Everybody's complaining about that one. Oh, it's the economy. No, it wasn't the economy. They didn't put up a website until 2011. And when they did, you couldn't buy on it. All it was delivering coupons. They became such a coupon-driven company that they had nothing to offer. There was nothing in the store anymore that you can't buy somewhere else for less money.
Right.
So, and they filed bankruptcy, Chapter 7. Gone.
I could feel the anger, Phil. You get as angry as I. It's frustrating when the solution that you offer, right? You could have probably helped Bed Bath and Beyond with some fundamentals of marketing and branding, and even to a website.
Oh, we go through it all constantly. I mean, I can't get this excited when we talk with clients, but
yeah, sure.
You have to sit there and you're trying to show them what's happening. And then the other part of it is they hear it and then they go, okay, yeah, we understand it. And the next day they'll call you up and go, can we do what we've been doing for the past 20 years? Because I think that worked. And you're going,
right.
Oh,
you dumped a pile of money because something wasn't working.
Yeah.
And then got cold feet.
Yeah. Well, they're afraid. Everybody's afraid. Middle management is always afraid. They're afraid to lose their jobs. They're afraid to make decisions. Right. And the CEOs are just looking for profitability and short-term profitability.
Yeah.
So
you deal with public companies?
One public company.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What range of sizes companies do you work with, like top line or however you want to measure it?
Yeah, we deal with our sweet spot is companies that are 100 to 500 million in revenue.
Okay. Wow.
But we do have some really large ones. And then we also have startups. And I love the startups because just like you, I do a bit of coaching with startups. I love startups. I've done, personally, I've done 4 successful startups. And so I love it. I love the enthusiasm. And I like the fact that those entrepreneurs listen because they want to understand what they have to do, and they know they don't have all the answers. And so sometimes we'll do deals where we'll trade services for equity and become your partner, and then help them get to a certain point. We can't get them all the way because at some point they're going to need money. In a lot of cases, but we can get them. We've been selling on Amazon. We've been helping brands build on Amazon since 2006. So we understand that platform better than anybody. We do things for brands on Walmart.com. We run ads on connected TV, Amazon Fire or anything connected, any of that, OTT channels, which I think anybody who's got a brand who has around $10,000 to spend every month, I would say take 60% of that and put it into connected TV, and that'll feed your online business. And it's become huge. You just have to have a great video. We manage social media. Anyway, I don't want to make it a pitch for you, but, my passion is always with the startups. I love to spend my time with the smaller companies that are 500,000 to 2 million that are still in that growth because they have the drive, the ambition. They'll pay attention to the facts and the data, and they'll stay in constant communication, and they're willing to try things. They're willing to say, we hear a lot of things about TikTok. Can we go on TikTok? Sure. Here's how you do it. And we had one client said, we want to go on TikTok. Do you think we can? I said, I would. And they're doing $80,000 a month on TikTok selling their product.
Wow.
So, and they've been on since, I think 5 months. So, TikTok's become a interesting platform because social selling, which was supposed to be a boom 7 or 8 years ago, which I didn't believe in because it was really only the meta world, Instagram, Facebook, the shops. But people didn't trust Meta. They didn't want to give them their credit card information. It wasn't the right audience. Facebook is older. Instagram is mostly females. And it wasn't a good way of communicating your value prop. But TikTok, I think, has done a better job. They made the shop very smooth. They've made it secure. And the customer base is willing to buy products on there if you get your value prop across very well. And it's amazing to me, the generation, like my daughter's generation, that 20, 25-year-old is looking for new items, and they look on TikTok.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so, my partner, currently in the other room, right? Yeah. And I just watch it to watch, people fall over, or one old gal who gives advice on how to get rid of fruit flies in your kitchen. Yeah. Meanwhile, my partner's booking trips to Mexico with it, and
it's amazing.
Yeah,
amazing. I like the ones where I'm into this for now. I don't know why. But they show sawmills, and they show these guys getting trees, and they take the trees and they get it down to wood, just the planks. And, and for some reason, it fascinates me. I could sit there and watch it like a fool. I go, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
A tree, and now it's a 2x4.
Oh, totally. I for some reason recently I'm on a kick of watching safety training videos from various companies and how, especially ones from the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
I think the 80s was just an implicitly funny time.
Yeah.
My God, the video content from there.
Yeah.
70s was kind of dark and esoteric, and then 80s is just gangbusters.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a unique time. That's for sure. But yeah, so that's sort of what we do. But I'm very, like you, I'm very customer focused. I wrote a book on it. And
funny enough, sorry, Phil.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, the customer focus piece with TikTok and meta ads and whatnot, I'll tell you the time that I goofed where we weren't customer focused and we buried a very successful arm of our company. We had an e-commerce division for at-home beverage delivery, mostly beer. It became almost, $1 million revenue stream for our company. And that was at a time when we were less than 3 million. So it was significant, circa 21, 2020, even 2022, not too bad. 2023, it was just tanking as our wholesale was massively growing. Our wholesale was growing like 50 or 60% year over year. Hospitality was growing. And then this e-commerce division was just tanking and tanking and tanking all the way down to 200K. So we don't have a strong brand in terms of knowing people, but we have a very strong brand in terms of engagement. So when we send out surveys, we have really high response rates, for example.
Yeah.
And we actually emailed 100 lapsed customers, former customers.
Yeah.
What made you use the service originally? What did you like about it? Why don't you use it anymore? And about 3/4 of the answers were things out of our control. And one of the big ones, besides people moving away or getting deployed in the military or whatever, was ordering beer online reminds me of COVID.
Oh,
Getting beer delivered to my house. They wanted to go back to stores. Now, for me, I don't have a car. I'm a liability behind a wheel, so I'm on foot everywhere. And I love e-commerce for that reason. There's only so many grocery bags I can carry. And so I wouldn't have thought of that. But we didn't think, we talked to our current customers, but we didn't talk to our former customers.
yeah.
And sending that lapsed customer email, it was like 60% response rate, that actually got back and filled out a really detailed, paragraphs of details. Some were giving us their life story on alcoholism and their family and whatnot and why they had stopped drinking. And you're going, I'm sorry. And also thank you. This is awesome. And terrible and mixed feelings, but it was just so crazy to see how many had left because of something I would have never come to the conclusion of. And we ended up outsourcing or closing down that party. We outsourced to a third-party logistics company. And even though they offer pretty much the exact same experience, it went from 25 or 30 grand a month to like 1/10 that, and it still links from our website and whatnot, but it's just 1/10 overnight. It's different. And it's all because it took us a little too long to kind of listen to the customer or the former customer and see what was up. And it was a shame because on meta ads, we were doing incredibly well. We were the only one in market. We had never played with Facebook ads. I was getting 100 to 1 ROAS for the first couple months of doing it because everyone was just trapped and we had no competitors. And then over the years, maybe TikTok could have dug us out of the ditch a bit, but too little, too late situation, I guess.
I founded a specialty food, like grab and go meal stores in Washington, D.C. This is back in early part of e-commerce. And I built brick and mortar stores. And then we built one of the first meal sites online, doing meals similar to what you see from, Blue Apron and these brands. But it was premature because, the supply chain wasn't filled out very well. So UPS, FedEx, they were just getting rolling with e-commerce. And nonetheless, we scaled, we did about $1 million, but we had a couple of stores, retail stores, and we wound up getting bought by a supermarket chain out of the South. And I had to go and do a workout. They took over everything, but I had to work for them for a couple of years. It was part of the deal at a high level. And there was the president of the company, and he taught me something that I still do to this day because I've gone on to found other things. He used to call. This was a $2.5, $3 billion a year supermarket chain, and every Friday he would call 20 customers on the phone. That's all he did on Fridays. Would call 20 customers. You'd give them a free, for talking to him on the phone, they'd send a free like $50 coupon for groceries. And he'd ask them, what do you like? What do you don't like? But he had these questions that this marketer had developed for him to ask the questions to get the responses. Because if you're the president of the company, you call up and you say, hi, Mrs. Jones, I see that you're a customer, because we had we were card marketers, so we knew everybody's name and what they
What does
bought.
that mean? What's a card
You
market?
have your how when you go into a store and they say, can you put your phone number in, and then we know
Sure.
we know who you are, you get the discounts. Well, back then it wasn't as sophisticated, so we just had a card. You scanned it with a UPC. It was tied to you, but it kept the database, and then you could pull that data. So it was a whole department of database marketing, and they would give him a list of people to call, people that bought frequently, didn't buy so frequently, bought in multiple stores, etc. And he used to call them he'd call 20 people, and you had to ask the question correctly, because if you're the president, you call them up, everything's always rosy. Oh no, it's great. I love your company. I love the stores. I love it. But he'd have to ask questions, and then he'd hit, I think it was like by the third or fourth question, and they'd unload about everything they didn't like. I was in there at 7:00 and there was nobody behind the bakery and nobody behind the deli, and there was nobody on the cashiers and nobody this and that. And he'd literally take notes, and then he would compare those notes to whether that store was trending positive in customer growth or negative in customer growth. Right. And if it was negative in customer growth, then he sort of had a guideline to start to look at what's happening, right? Mm-hmm. And because if you got enough customers from a specific store that started saying there's never any cashiers at night, then you start looking at the schedules, you start doing all these things. Because you're in the corporate office, you got 200 stores from Florida on up to Washington D.C. and west to the Mississippi. So it was a great thing that I thought he did, and I started doing it when I built the shaving company. I used to call customers every week. How was the delivery? What'd you like? What you didn't like? And they'd all, price always comes up. You have to sort of discount that, because people are always going to say, I want lower prices. Yeah. But you have to ask the questions correctly. And you learn a lot from talking to customers. And then even if they're negative, I'll never shop with you again. The fact that you called them, they'll come back and buy another time. They'll come back again, because now you just turned them around. You called them. So I always used to focus on people who had a problem with their delivery or didn't like the product or whatever. And then I'd call them up and talk about it and say, okay, great. Let me take notes. Hang on. I'm going to get this over to the people who are manufacturing razors. And, and then they appreciated the call so much that, totally. So it was just a tool to stay in touch with customers.
Oh, I love the angry customer. I'll take, we don't have a problem with them being rosy, because half the time I talk to these folks, it's at beer festivals, and they've had a couple. Yeah. They got no problem telling the co-founder of the company what they think. I'll give you a piece of my mind. You got to bring back that sour beer that nobody liked, but I loved it. So I can't shut them up, and I don't want to. I love hearing from them. It was a great industry to get customer feedback, because you're going to get it. But I love the angry. I shouldn't use that word, but I appreciate the angry customer, and have had so many sort of hug your hater moments of somebody who writes an absolute diatribe of an email. We got some of them when we shut down our e-commerce division, and then you have to kind of pause and scream into a pillow for a bit. You're upset that they don't see your point of view.
Yeah.
And you take 12 hours, you sleep on it. And then first thing I do at the gym is when I'm in my best headspace of the day is I write a reply that's as compassionate and transparent as possible. Something a shareholder would be uncomfortable with me sharing, in terms of like, here's why we made this decision. And the amount of times it's gone from, oh, okay, I'll see you at the bar. that has been the net result of, oh yeah, maybe I was a little cranky when I said that. Right? And but they just want to be heard, right? Because fundamentally, it's just like a romantic relationship or a family or whatever. It's just a matter of, I don't feel seen and heard, because you took away the whole thing that was the reason for me supporting you, and putting my hard-earned dollars into your business, and you didn't even talk to me first, right? And they assume you did it because it was not profitable enough, or they assume you did it for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
They make a narrative. And then companies have this really, really vanilla PR statement about why they did it.
Yeah.
And places like Quora and Reddit tear it apart, and social media. They just like, oh, look at this bullshit, right? And I can't blame them, because it does. It looks super fake, right? And people can sniff through that. So I just prefer to be straight with those angry customers. Say, here's why we did it. I hated doing it, for the record. I loved that e-commerce division, and I loved that beer, or I loved that whatever that you made, but we can't do it because X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was costing us $55 a delivery to ship $60 worth of product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the problem with it. That's the problem with a lot of products. It's the delivery. Anything that's heavy and bulky is very difficult to make a profit on shipping.
Oh yeah, I'm waiting for evaporated beer. As soon as we could turn it into a powder and people
Exactly.
bring it home, it's going to change the game.
It's funny you should say that. We had a company, not as a different company, that was making a specific sauce, and we kept saying, this is, they kept saying, we're losing money on shipping. We're losing money on shipping. We're losing money on shipping. How can we turn it around? And we said the same thing: turn it into a powder, sell it as a powder, and you can put that in an envelope and ship it. It'll cost you nothing, because the bottles, it was glass, first of all, and it was 16-ounce glass bottles, and that's 1 pound glass plus all the packaging material. It's between the damages and the shipping, it was killing them. But they had two alternatives. They kept the liquid, and then they started selling the powder, and the powder started booming, and people were buying it like crazy, and that was extremely profitable. So
that's funny.
It is funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a firm believer in listening to. You have to put up with the customers yelling at you. It's part of the game, but I can never write my own customer email responses, because if you send me an email, I just respond as to what I'm responding to. And people tell me all the time, I'm too cold. I don't, because I don't say, hey, Mike, how are you today? I don't do that. You say, hey, what's the ROAS on this? I respond back, 5.84. Blah, blah, blah. So I don't respond back and go, okay, Bob, here's what it is. And it's okay in business, but it's not good when you're dealing with customers.
Yeah.
So I usually have somebody else construct the email.
Oh, I'm a total hypocrite. I mean, I'm telling you here about talking to angry customers. I have one today, right before this call, got an email. And normally I try to get them on the phone, right? Because writing it has no tonality. It has no body language. Phone doesn't have body language, but at least you got tonality. And I didn't do it. And I should have seen it coming, but it was a busy day. And I just wrote what I thought was a compassionate email. And they came back guns blazing. So, I always feel bad. I feel angry. I feel whatever when that happens. And I know first thing tomorrow I do when I go for my 5 a.m. walk or whatnot, it's going to be on my brain, right? And I'm going to craft something and I'm going to call her at 9 a.m., right? And it might not do anything, but at least I could say I tried to remedy it. Because I can't stand, you don't have a business without customers.
Oh no, you absolutely don't. And I think people think they can do it. The accountants get involved and they want to, start cutting things, and you go, well, keep cutting and you're not going to have any customers, but your job will be easier because you don't have to worry about, putting any numbers in.
We had a prospective shareholder when we were raising capital who was pretty high up at a major Canadian clothing company that you have in the States too. And it was in product development. And he said something that stuck with me for years about product development, that the head of product cannot be marketing because they're going to go off trends. It can't be sales because they're going to go off what's currently selling. It can't be finance because they're going to go off margin alone. and it can't be production because they're going to go off what's easy to make. You have to have really sort of the CEO as the product person or a head of product, because it needs to be somebody who balances all those qualities, right? And doesn't chase trends, doesn't chase what's easy to make, doesn't chase something that customers don't want, and so on and so forth. But look what happened. Look what happened to, you see the Nike stories recently. They pulled distribution in the last year from hundreds, if not thousands, of brick and mortars, and really focused and leaned into e-commerce. And don't get me wrong, e-commerce is a tremendous platform, but we've seen it time and time again where companies like Best Buy have done really well when they have both. They might close some stores, but there's a different experience that you get in store. And they pulled these retail channels where they were number one in the category, and they've just been plummeting. I mean, there's some other stuff at play, and this is just one CPG guy's interpretation of the whole thing, but it was like, oh man, you broke one of like the fundamental principles of like, you had distribution. Like that's the number one driver of brand awareness. It's the number one driver of sales. It's everything. And it's what the customers want because they can get it at their local shop.
Yeah.
You can pick it up and put it on and smell it, and maybe not smell it, but you know.
I haven't. I'll look for him. I just looked at the time and we're a little bit over. And the conversation was good. I enjoyed it. Thanks for coming on. And hope to keep in touch because the conversation was very lively.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. Well, this was a lot of fun. I didn't even notice the time.
Yeah.
Have to come to Nova Scotia for light beer.
My son did the Boston to Halifax sail race. Which,
no kidding.
Yeah, which is a big race. Yeah, he's a sailor. He was in college in sailing and at University of Rhode Island, but he got involved in doing races like that out to Bermuda, Nova Scotia, all kinds of places. And he they did the Halifax race. I've never been to Halifax, but I've always wanted to go.
It's often called Boston is often called for Haligonians, which is our demonym, what Halifax could have been if it weren't for the explosion. And there's a lot of commonalities culturally and architecturally and even, shape, highway infrastructure, not quite as nightmarish as Boston, but there's just a lot of, it's a city that Atlantic Canadians are very comfortable in. And they don't tend to be very comfortable in a lot of cities.
Yeah.
So it's I think there's a lot of cross-cultural pollination. I mean, you guys, we do the Christmas tree exchange, right?
Yeah.
Every year. And I know there's some other stuff. I just can't think of it at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you being on, and we've run over a little bit. And to the viewers, I didn't get to any of the comments. I apologize. I'll address them in the video when it goes up tomorrow. Next week, tune in next week. We've got more great guests, more great entrepreneurs, and we're a little bit out of time now. So thanks for being on. And
thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Josh.